Okay. Well, I start with my word, my introduction. It carries the same title as the webinar. The role of the church in times of war, a diaconal response in the Middle East. In times of war, the church in the Middle East is called to be more than a place of worship. It's called to be a place of refuge, healing, truth, and service. War does not only destroy buildings, it wounds memory, family life, dignity, trust, and hope. Prayer remains the heart of the church, but true prayer must also become action. This is where the diaconal mission of the church becomes essential. The Middle East has known repeated wars, occupations, displacement, economic collapse, and sectarian tension. Lebanon, Syria, Palestine, Iraq, and other parts of the region, people have often lived between fear and survival. Churches have sometimes found themselves caring not only for their own communities, but also for neighbors from different religions, backgrounds, and political identities. This is one of the most powerful forms of Christian witness, service without discrimination. A diaconal response begins with the presence. During war, many institutions disappear, become weak, or lose people's trust. The church, when faithful to its mission, remains present among the people. Priests, pastors, monks, nuns, youth groups, and lay volunteers often become the first line of support. They often open church halls for displaced families, organize food and medicine, help children continue learning, visit the elderly, and comfort those who mourn. This presence is not symbolic, it's deeply practical. Sometimes the most Christian act is simply to remain when everyone else has left. Another important role of the church is healing trauma. War creates visible injuries, but also invisible wounds. Children become afraid of loud sounds. Parents feel powerless. Young people lose faith in the future. Families carry grief, anger, and anxiety. A diaconal church, therefore, cares for the whole person, body, mind, and soul. It offers pastoral care, safe spaces for children, counseling when possible, community gathering, and spiritual support in the Middle East, where many people may not easily speak about trauma directly. The church helps by creating gentle spaces where pain can be expressed without shame. The church also has a responsibility to protect truth. In times of war, propaganda, rumors, demonization, and hatred spread quickly. Communities are tempted to see others only as enemies. The church resists language that dehumanizes people. It speaks with courage, but also with wisdom. A diaconal response does not mean silence in the face of injustice. On the contrary, service and justice belong together. At the same time, the church in the Middle East must be careful not to become a political party. Its mission is not to serve one faction, one ideology, or one sectarian interest. Its role is to be a moral and spiritual voice rooted in the gospel. It means speaking from the perspective of human dignity, peace, justice, and reconciliation. The church is close to the suffering, not close to power or its own benefit. A true diaconal response also includes reconciliation. War leaves behind bitterness, revenge, and broken relationships. In many Middle Eastern societies, people continue living side by side after violence ends. Therefore, the church must help communities imagine a future beyond hatred. It means creating a path where truth, justice, forgiveness, and living together can slowly become possible. This is difficult work, but it's central to the Christian calling. Youth have a special place in this mission. Many young people in the Middle East feel that their future has been stolen by war, corruption, unemployment, or migration. The church must listen to them, form them, and trust them. Young people can lead initiatives in relief, education, media, music, mental health awareness, and interfaith service. Involving youth in diaconal work helps them discover that faith is not only inherited, it is lived. Women also carry much of the hidden burden of war. Mothers, grandmothers, teachers, nurses, religious sisters, and women volunteer often hold communities together when everything else collapses. A serious diaconal response must recognize their leadership, not only their sacrifice. In many local contexts, women are the ones who know which families are hungry, which children are afraid, which elderly person is alone, and which home is silently suffering. The church should empower this knowledge and leadership. The church's service in war must also be professional and organized. Good intentions are not enough. Relief work requires coordination, transparency, accountability, and respect for people's privacy. Aid should never be used to control people or pressure them religiously. The church's help must be offered freely as an expression of Christ's love. When the church serves Muslim, Christians, refugees, migrants, and the poor without distinction, it becomes a living sign of the kingdom of God. The diaconal church does not wait for peace before acting. It creates small signs of peace in the middle of the war. It lights candles where there is darkness. It breaks bread where there is hunger. It listens where there is pain. It reminds every person, whatever the religion or background, they are not abandoned. This is the church's calling to be the presence of Christ among the wounded people of the Middle East. Diaconia in the Middle East, where wounds are deep and history is heavy, has distinctive traits. It's ecumenical, Orthodox, Catholic, Protestant, Evangelical. Groups coordinate through MECC and others. It's interfaith. Muslim and Christian cooperate deeply. This is the diakonia to the neighbor. It's political, since running aid in Gaza, South Lebanon, or elsewhere means dealing with checkpoints, armed groups, and sanctions. Martyrdom is part of the profile. Church aid workers have been killed in the area. Diaconia here costs more than money. The guiding principle is the church of the poor. The church belongs to everyone, but God's bias is towards the poor. So the church's care must start with the last, the least, and the left out. Christ defined his mission by the poor. Aid is worship. Development is worship. Helping people of the peripheries is worship. This is the theology of resilience. Thank you for listening. Now let me introduce Father Antoine Ahmar, who will be leading us in meditation and prayers. Father Antoine is a Catholic priest, member of the Lebanese Maronite Order. He is professor of fundamental theology at the Pontifical Faculty of Theology at the Holy Spirit University of Kaslik, Lebanon, and former dean of theology and former president of the university. Since 2021, he serves as director of the Theology and Ecumenical Department at the Middle East Council of Churches. Father Antoine, the floor is yours.
Thank you. A reading from the Gospel according to Matthew. Jesus said to his disciples, "Be careful not to practice your righteousness in front of others to be seen by them. If you do, you will have no reward from your Father in heaven. So when you give to the needy, do not announce it with trumpets, as the hypocrites do in the synagogues and on the streets, to be honored by others. Truly, I tell you, they have received their reward in full. But when you give to the needy, do not let your left hand know what your right hand is doing, so that your giving may be in secret. Then your Father, who sees what is done in secret, will reward you." Dear colleagues and friends, we gather today to reflect on, among other topics, how to enhance the recognition of the church diaconal response and increase its visibility. And yet, we have just heard Jesus said in the Gospel, "When you give to the needy, Do not let your left hand know what your right hand is doing. At first glance, this teaching seems to stand in tension with the purpose of our webinar. How do you reconcile secret giving with visible service? This tension can only be held and resolved if we go deeper into the true meaning of our mission. The church diakonia is rooted in God's call to compassion, to sharing, to love. It is, first of all, a matter of the heart, of intention. We give not to seek attention or applause or any form of reward. For God Himself gives without seeking anything in return. That's what we call grace. Jesus is calling us to purity of intention. He's not calling us to invisibility. On the contrary, if our service truly reflects God's love, care, and compassion, it cannot remain hidden. In the same Gospel of Matthew, just a few paragraphs earlier, Jesus says, "You are the light of the world. A town built on a hill cannot be hidden." In the same way, let your light shine before others, that they may see your good deeds and glorify your Father in heaven. When the church responds to human suffering, feeding, healing, accompanying, it participates in the Missio Dei. It becomes a visible sign of God's presence in history, particularly in times of war, trial, and crisis. It becomes the small light in the darkness. In theological terms, we say that the church is the sacrament of Christ. Its very purpose is to be a sign and instrument of God's love in the world. Therefore, reflecting on the visibility of the church diaconal service is not about making ourselves visible. It's about making God's love visible. Consequently, the recognition and the visibility we seek are not for self-promotion. They are a form of witness. I would like to invite you to start this webinar with the Lord's Prayer. Reflecting on the petition, "Give us today our daily bread," one of the great voices of the Syriac Christian tradition, Jacob of Saruq, Yaqub Saruji, reminds us that this prayer is given equally to the rich and the poor. It is a prayer that corrects the human heart. If the poor asks for more than bread, he may be judged. But if the rich pray for bread, he should feel ashamed because he already has plenty. The Syriac theologian goes further in his homily. The rich person should understand this. His house, where food is stored every day, is like a place entrusted to him to care for others. He's like a manager responsible for helping other people. Because of this, when Jesus said, "Give us our daily bread," he was teaching the rich to give to others. The rich person should live as if he is equal with the poor. He should share his food with them from what God has given to everyone. As we now pray together, let us remember that our mission is to witness to this sharing and to the abundant gifts of God. I will pray in Syriac, and I invite each of you to pray in the language of your heart. أبون تبشمايو نتقراش شموخ تيتي ملكوتوخ نهوي سبيونوخ أي كانوا تبشمايو في برعو هبلان لحموت سنقونان يومونو وشبوكلان حوبين وحطوهين أي كانوا دفحنان شبقن الحيوبين لو تعلن لسيونو إلو فصون من بيشو متو لتلوخي ملكوتو وحيلو تشبحتو العلام علمين آمين.
Thank you, Father Antoine. Before starting with the interventions, before getting to Reverend Kenneth Mtata, I just want to inform everybody, the public, that we have a translation from English to Arabic, and that all questions should be submitted to the chat so that our colleague Manoj will be collecting them and sorting them by theme to be able to answer them at the end. Let me say it in Arabic. في ترجمة فورية للعربي وفي من العربي للإنجليزي اللي إذا بس في حدا بده يحكي عربي، والأسئلة يجب أن توضع في مكان الشات، مكان الدردشة، صفحة الدردشة، حتى زميلنا يفرزهم حسب الموضوع ويوزعهم ويعطيني إياهم حتى أقدر أوزعهم على المعنيين بالأمر. Thank you. Now the word is for Reverend Kenneth Mtata. He is the Director of Programs for Life and Justice and Peace and at the WCC, World Council of Churches. Prior to this current role, he was the General Secretary of Zimbabwe Council of Churches from 2016 to 2022, and then the Executive Study Secretary for Lutheran Theology and Practice at the Lutheran World Federation in Geneva between 2010 and 2016. Dr. Mtata holds a doctorate in theology from South Africa and a master in public policy and management from Germany. He works mainly in the interface of religion, theology, public policy, and social development. He is ordained as Lutheran pastor and was born in Zimbabwe. Reverend Mtata, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Dr. Abs, and we are so grateful that we can join together to reflect on the role of the church in times of war. And on behalf of the World Council of Churches, I'm glad to join this important conversation. I'm also grateful that we are co-hosting this with the regional ecumenical body, the Middle East Council of Churches, and we appreciate your leadership and thanks to my colleagues, particularly Carla and all those who have been involved in planning. We are meeting at a moment when the world cries of the world cries of war are heard everywhere, from Ukraine to the Sahel, from Sudan to the Great Lakes region of Africa, from the mountains of Myanmar to many who are bleeding in the lands. Armed conflict continue to shatter lives. But today our focus is on the Middle East, a region that is sacred for the three monotheistic faiths, yet which is too often described in language of violence. When we speak of Gaza, when we speak of Lebanon, Syria, Yemen, Iraq, and now Iran, these are given examples as examples of instability and war in the world. But it's very easy for us to speak in generalities when we are speaking about war. But in reality, war has real victims, faces, names, God's people, and part of God's creation. And the world today is more dangerous than it was since the Second World War. The Council on Foreign Relations reports that the number of ongoing conflicts is the highest since 1945. In 2025 alone, 9 capital cities from Kyiv to Tehran, from Beirut to Tel Aviv, were targeted in state-led airstrikes. War remains one of the greatest causes of human loss and destruction of life-sustaining ecosystems. The violence and impacts of early warning systems projects that in 2026 alone, approximately 28,000 people will be killed in Ukraine, 7,700 more will be killed in the Palestinian occupied territories, Palestinian territories, and more than 4,000 people will be killed in Sudan. These are just conservative estimates, and these numbers could add up to hundreds of thousands. And this is in addition to those who have already lost their lives. Since October 7, 2023, more than 20,000 children have been killed, thousands maimed, and many requiring amputations in Gaza. In the recent escalation of hostilities in the Middle East since February 2026, UNICEF reports that more than 2,100 children have been killed or injured, an average of 87 children every single day. Those who remain alive are displaced. In the Middle East alone, UNHCR estimates that 3.2 million people have been displaced in Iran, including up to 864,000 children. In Lebanon, more than 1 million people, nearly 1/5 of the population, have been forced to leave their homes. Across the region, approximately 48 million children were already living in conflict-affected areas before this escalation began. So the earth is really groaning, and war is destroying the ecosystems of life. Farmland is scorched, ancient olive groves are bulldozed, water wells are contaminated, and the debris of bombardment are releasing toxic chemicals into the soil and groundwater make these resources unusable for a very long time. In Gaza alone, an estimated 2.3 million tons of rubble, now contaminated, covers the land. So Paul challenges us that we need to identify with the creation that is already groaning until now through the pains of childbirth. What is it that which is being born? In times of such groaning, we do not hear only groans, but also loud screams. The question is what the church should do in such circumstances, especially when the church itself is also bleeding. We hear that in the West Bank and Jerusalem, unemployment among Christians has reached 72%. Across Syria, more than 11 million people have fled their homes, and Christian communities have shrunk from 40 to 50%. In Iraq, a once 1.5 million strong Christian population has dwindled to about just 200,000 or even less. These are not just statistics. This is an erosion of more than 2,000 years of faithful Christian witness. Pope Francis challenged us that it is very easy for us to be co-opted into the spirit of indifference, which is the greatest sin of our time. As the church, we cannot afford to be part of this indifference to war. We should not be paralyzed by the geopolitics of selfishness, and we cannot remain silent. So the church must be clear about its response. In such times as this, we can respond in a diaconal way, as we have been invited to do in this reflection. Diakonia, as we read about this in the New Testament, is a very common but very definitive term that is used to describe the role of service of the church, the ministry of the church, the service of the church in the world. We are told in Luke chapter 10, verse 40, where Martha is challenged because she is distracted by many things, even a commitment to service. Yet there is an invitation that we are invited to serve together on the tables, especially in support of those who are most vulnerable. We are invited not only in our service, but also in our leadership disposition to take up this orientation of service. When I was thinking about this reflection, I thought that there could be three diaconal dispositions that could inform our response in situations of war. In this diaconal response, it's not only about response to situations of war, but also a preventive orientation in the context of war. The first of such dispositions is a diakonia of peace. Before war erupts, the church is invited in this diakonia of peace to become peacemakers in the fuller sense of the term. This means that we invest in conflict transformation training within our congregations, but also across interfaith platforms, so that we build trust within and between communities, publicly rejecting narratives of enemy making and dehumanization. Jesus promises that blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called the children of God. Preventive diaconia of peace will also mean that the churches model reconciliation in their own lives, confronting internal divisions, addressing historical grievances, and refusing to bless any nationalist or sectarian claim that leads to violence. The World Council of Churches has long supported local peace building efforts, local peace committees, and early warning networks in the Middle East that identify rising tensions before they explode. But when war is already broken and war is raging, the church's response in diaconia of peace must include advocating for immediate ceasefire, accompanying humanitarian corridors, negotiating local truces to allow evacuation of the wounded or burial of the dead, and pressing for the release of hostages and prisoners. It means refusing to abandon dialogue with the other side, even when bombs are falling. It means the church stands as a critical platform for dialogue where adversaries can meet, as churches have done already in the region. The responsive role also includes post-war truth and reconciliation efforts, so that we transition in just ways and in ways that do not allow wars to persist. The second way of responding diaconally as a church is in diaconia of presence, as we have already heard from Dr. Abbs. Before the war displaces communities, the church strengthens the social fabric that makes displacement less likely. This means investing in local institutions, in schools, in clinics, in agricultural cooperatives, in housing that give people reason to stay. It means building relationships of mutual aid across confessional lines, so that when tensions rise, neighbors do not become overnight, they do not become enemies. The Good Samaritan in Jesus' parable did not stumble upon a wounded man by accident. He was traveling a road where violence was known to happen, yet he did not avoid it. He went to meet and bandage his wounds, pouring oil and wine. Then he put the man on his donkey, brought him to an inn, and took care of him, as we read in Luke 10. Preventive presence of the church is choosing to remain in vulnerable areas before the crisis, not evacuating its leadership at first sign of danger. It is the decision of the patriarchs, of dioceses, of parishes, of councils to stay with their people even when governments advise them to depart. I know that we can speak about this as if this is light. This is sacrificial. This is the sacrificial presence of the church. But when war has already erupted, when societies are already torn apart, the responsive diakonia of presence is when the church is staying, but also taking care of those who are affected. It is keeping hospitals open, even in besieged areas. It is sheltering those who are displaced in church halls and monasteries. And we have seen the churches in the Middle East demonstrating this. And so we are speaking here to those who cannot be lectured, because we have seen you demonstrate this already. The third and also last way of thinking of diaconia in a conflict of peace is through prophetic diaconia. Before the war begins, prophetic diaconia is the church speaking truth to conditions that make war possible and that make war profitable. This means naming the arms trade that profits from conflict and calling on member churches to divest from weapons manufacturers. It means exposing hate speech and incitement to violence before they become normalized. It means warning that dehumanization of any people group, whether by political leaders, media, or religious authorities, is sin. Preventive prophetic witness also means that the church refuses to offer religious legitimation to war. There are no holy wars, no violence can be claimed in the name of God, who revealed himself in the crucified Christ. The church must say this clearly before the wars begin. But once the war has started and the war is raging on, responsive prophetic diaconia must allow the church to continue speaking truth to power even in the midst of the fire. It means naming specific violations, bombing of hospitals, the siege that starves children, the targeting of civilian infrastructure, the destruction of water and food systems, the use of internationally banned weapons. The churches cannot be selective and silent when such crimes against humanity are being committed. So we learn to do what is right, we seek justice, and we defend the oppressed. We take the cause of the fatherless, we plead the case of the widow, as the prophet Isaiah invites us. Responsive prophetic diaconia, responsive prophetic witness means that the church cannot remain silent about the sins of the powerful nations, whether these are committed by their armies or by their non-state armed groups or even foreign interveners. It means calling for accountability even when it is costly. And it means...
Can you conclude, Reverend Kenneth? Can you
yes,
conclude?
as we conclude, we say that this means that the church bears a witness of hope, declaring that even in the darkest hour, war does not have the final word. The resurrection of our Lord Jesus Christ is definitive, even in moments when life is threatened. It is within this scope of diaconia that we have been invited this afternoon to reflect with you, and I hope we can find some insights from this for our ongoing discussion. Thank you, Dr. Abs.
Thank you, Reverend. That I really like your reflection, and I think that the laying the theological grounding took some more time. It deserves, because it's the essential of our thinking and our action. Now the word is for George Majaj. Mr. George Majaj is a senior humanitarian and development professional with extensive experience in regional coordination, emergency response, and partnership management across the Middle East and North Africa. He currently serves as the regional representative for ACT Alliance in the MENA region. He has worked extensively in humanitarian coordination, localization, peace building, and capacity strengthening, with a particular focus on supporting vulnerable communities. His work emphasizes collaboration between churches and humanitarian organizations. Mr. Majaj, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Dr. Abs. Just allow me to share my screen.
Yes.
Seems I can't get my presentation. Albin, can you share my presentation, please?
Yes, we can see it now.
Okay. Dear colleagues, dear excellencies, dear friends, it's an honor to join you today, and I would like to sincerely thank the World Council of Churches and the Middle East Council of Churches for convening this important conversation at such a critical time in our region. Next. At a moment when the Middle East continues to face overlapping crises, conflict, displacement, economic collapse, climate-related shocks, shrinking civil space, and deepening vulnerabilities, it is critical to reflect on not only on what we do, but how we do and with whom. As the crises are not abstract, they are lived realities for millions of people who face daily uncertainty, loss, and vulnerability. Today, I would like to focus specifically on the role of ACT Alliance in the region and how our emergency responses is fundamentally shaped through partnership with churches and faith-based organizations. Next. Allow me to briefly introduce ACT Alliance. ACT Alliance is one of the largest faith-based humanitarian and development networks, bringing together over 164 member organizations working in more than 127 countries. ACT Alliance operates through national and regional forums that bring together members from churches, church-related organizations, and their economical partners to respond collectively to humanitarian needs, advocate for justice, and strengthen local capacities. Our response model is built on the understanding that effective humanitarian action must be locally led, contextually grounded, and collectively coordinated. And this is where churches play a critical and central role. Many of our ACT members will be present later, so I will focus only on general approaches of ACT Alliance, and our members maybe will provide more details. Next. In recent years, ACT Alliance has been actively responding to emergencies through our members across the region, from conflicts in Syria, Palestine, Lebanon, Sudan, to displacement crises affecting Jordan, Iraq, Egypt, and beyond. Our approaches to emergency response is grounded in three key principles. Localization, where we believe that local actors, especially churches and faith-based organizations, are not just implementers, but leaders of humanitarian response. They are the first responders and the last to leave, and the most trusted by their communities. Second, coordination. Through ACT Global Humanitarian System, churches and faith-based organizations lead implementation, while ACT, we mobilize resources quickly to ensure coordinated, accountable responses among members. This allows us to avoid duplication, maximize impact, and align with international humanitarian standards. Third, emergency response not only food, shelter, or medical assistance. It is also about restoring dignity, strengthening resilience, and addressing the social impact of the crisis. Next. ACT Alliance does not view emergency response as a standalone intervention. Through our partnerships with churches, we support a continuum from relief to recovery and resilience. In the emergency phase, churches provide life-saving assistance, food, shelter, health services to affected families and communities, and more. Supporting health services, psychological care, often through church-run facilities. Provide educational and protection services, especially for children and women. In the recovery phase, churches support livelihood, education, and rebuilding social fabric. Resilience phase, churches contribute to strengthening local system, promoting social cohesion, peace building, and resilience. But beyond services, churches enable something deeper: access and trust. This long-term presence is critical in a region where crisis is not a short-lived but protracted and recurring. I think we will have more on this with our members presenting later. Next. Our experience in MENA shows that collaboration between ACT Alliance and churches brings several distinct advantages. First, speed and flexibility. Because our churches are already embedded in communities, response can mobilize quickly, even hard to reach areas. Second, contextual understanding. Church partners bring knowledge of social dynamics, vulnerabilities, and culture sensitivities. Third, trust and acceptance. In polarized environments, churches often have a credibility to reach across divides. Fourth, integrated response. Churches naturally combine material assistance with psychological care, pastoral, and community support, reflecting the holistic nature of diaconia. Okay. Yes. Next. ACT Alliance does not work for churches. We work with churches. Our national and regional forums are spaces where churches and faith-based organizations come together to share analysis, coordinate response, develop joint strategies and appeals, strengthen capacity in areas such as humanitarian standards, gender justice, climate justice, safeguarding, advocate collectively at the national and regional global levels. This collaborative model enhances both effectiveness and accountability. It also ensures that local voices are heard and reflected in global humanitarian discourse. Next. While churches are central to implementation, ACT Alliance plays a key enabling role. Coordination, capacity strengthening, advocacy, and resource mobilization. In this sense, ACT acts as a bridge linking local faith-based action with global humanitarian systems. Next. While the role of churches is vital, it's not without challenges. Church-based actors often operate with limited resources under significant pressure and in high complex political environments. They may face constraints in accessing funding, navigating humanitarian system, or maintaining neutrality in polarized contexts. At the same time, there is growing recognition with the global humanitarian system of the importance of faith-based actors and localization. As ACT Alliance, we see that it is our responsibility to address these gaps by advocating for greater investment, local actors, simplify access to funding, and strengthen partnership across the systems. Next.
Very good.
As we reflect on the role of churches in times of wars, I would emphasize on three forward-looking priorities. First, we must continue strengthening our locally led humanitarian action and empower local faith actors. Churches are not just part of the responses, they are the central to it. Second, we must deepen our collaboration with ecumenical families, including the WCC and MECC, to ensure alignment and collective impact. Third, we must ensure that our responses uphold not only humanitarian standards, but also values that define us: dignity, justice, compassion, and peace. In conclusion, ACT Alliance is not a parallel structure. It is a deeply rooted partnership with churches and church faith-based organizations. Together, we are able to reach those most in need, respond with dignity, and remain present beyond the immediate crisis. In a region marked by uncertainty, this partnership is not only effective, it is essential. Next. Yeah, and here I've just put some photos from our responses with our ACT members in different appeals in different countries, from Palestine, Lebanon, Syria, Jordan, and Iraq. And we are planning also another response in Iran will come soon. Thank you. Over to you, Dr. Abs.
Thank you, Mr. Majaj. Thank you very much. We know very much, and we're very happy to deal with ACT Alliance. I always say that ACT Alliance and WCC are one with us and with them, since we are part of this international ecumenical family, which really is making difference in this world. Now the word is for the engineer Samer Laham from MECC. Samer is a person who was deeply involved in the church since his youth, in the Orthodox youth movement. And then throughout his career, he played a significant role in ecumenical and humanitarian work, both at regional and international levels. He represented the Orthodox Church of Antioch and the Ethiopian youth in the MECC and in the WCC. As an engineer, he was appointed by the Patriarchate to represent the Church at the Middle East Council of Church, at the Middle East Resource Sharing Group for 15 years. In 1994, he founded, with the blessing of the Patriarch, his beatitude, the Department of Ecumenical Relations and Development, for which Sarah will be talking in a while, within the Patriarchate. He was then the Syria country director for this organization until he came to the MECC, where now he is serving as the regional director of the Diaconia department. Samer, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Dr. Abs. Dear sisters and brothers in Christ, and my presentation is not really going to reflect any figures, because I know that all of you know, let's say, the severity of the crisis in the region, but rather to be a testimony about, let's say, MECC interventions in different countries. Dear brothers and sisters in Christ and esteemed attendees, the Middle East Council of Churches stands as a vital frontlines responder to the needs of affected communities in times of crisis. Since its establishment as a fellowship of churches in the region, Diaconia has remained in the heart of its mandate as a strategic vision. Rooted in our Christian heritage, MECC humanitarian calling is inspired by the example of the Good Samaritan. It reflects the teaching of our Lord through tangible acts and compassion and solidarity, serving prisoners, the hungry, the sick, the displaced, widows, orphans, and all those in need, not merely in words, but through meaningful action. Across decades of challenges in the Middle East, whether natural disaster, occupation, armed conflicts, or civil unrest, MECC, through its Diaconia department, has constantly remained on the front lines. With the steadfast support of its partners, the Council responds to emerging needs, reaching the most vulnerable without discrimination, regardless of backgrounds, identity, or affiliation. MECC's work extends beyond immediate humanitarian relief. Its early recovery and development interventions focus on strengthening resilience, preserving human dignity, and empowering individuals and communities to rebuild their lives with self-reliance. These initiatives are not seen simply as social services, but as a faith-based expression of the Council's mission, promoting unity, cooperation, and shared responsibility among churches and communities. Through its diaconal mandate, MECC has supported member churches in establishing and strengthening their own humanitarian and development arms. This has enabled local churches to respond more effectively to emerging needs, guided by international humanitarian standards. Notably, several of these diaconal entities have grown to become leading national responders, playing a critical role in crises within their respective community countries. Alongside this, MECC continues to invest in capacity building through tailored training programs for some churches' staff and volunteers. While it's not possible to fully capture the breadth of MECC impact in a few words, I would like really to give you some example about our interventions in some targeted countries. For example, in Syria, MECC was among the first responders during the Iraq War and later throughout the Syria crisis. Working closely with local churches, a notable success in the project, restoration of church diaconal entities affected by Syrian crisis, supported by one of MECC partners, where a joint steering committee representing all members of the churches oversaw the rehabilitation of more than 36 projects benefiting the entire communities in order to counter unemployment for young IDPs in Syria. Another vital example related to livelihood sector is through equipping young people with portable skills and financial grants on how to initiate their small projects, and to care about environment and develop the value chain system in rural communities. And to respond to food security, the program supports farmers and livestock breeders with the required inputs and irrigation system to replant their farms and safeguard the food security for their families and communities. And in order to provide friendly education space, Syria program rehabilitated and equipped to date more than 250 schools with easy access to students with disabilities. In addition to rehabilitate tens of private and public clinics, additionally, MECC supports localization by supporting local church organizations working in relief and development, by funding them to implement various activities, as well as support community-based organizations to build the capacity of their staff and to develop and implement different interventions based on the need in their communities. In Lebanon, and following the Beirut port explosion, MECC swiftly established a local ecumenical coordination committee. This collaborative effort enabled an effective and timely response, reaching a large number of affected individuals, protecting for women and children, as well as for Iraqi and Syrian refugees residing in Lebanon since years, was one of the cornerstone in Lebanon also. Lately, MECC initiated a pilot home care program for both men and women, including Syrian IDPs, by providing technical training in certified hospitals and universities to provide this needy service within the Lebanese communities with low cost. And finally, and under livelihood sectors, it launches a special program to develop existing small and medium business through the provision of flexible loan to be revolved to support other beneficiaries at regular basis. In Jordan, MECC is currently implementing a pilot project under the Nexus approach with ACT. For the first time, it convened a consultation gathering church-related organizations from different denominations in Jordan to exchange lessons learned on integrating peace building into humanitarian actions to strengthen social cohesion between the communities, along with other humanitarian interventions benefiting both Syrians, Iraqis, and host communities. And in order to raise the awareness of child protection within the education system in Jordan, and for the first time also, MECC has implemented a special training to 200 teachers in church-related schools in the kingdom. This pilot initiative will end up with drafting a special child protection policy that can be adopted by many church-related schools. At regional level, the Council, through the Department of Theological and Ecumenical Department, has launched in 2018 a pilot program called Trauma, Healing, and Spiritual Counseling for Church Workers, whether be ordained or non-ordained, who are serving in front lines, to equip them with psycho-spiritual tools to better understand the trauma, strengthen their own resilience, and effectively support their affected communities, because many church workers working in front line lack the necessary training to address the trauma effectively. while also being personally affected by the same crisis. The program outreached many church workers in Syria, Lebanon, Jordan, Egypt, and Iraq. The program strengthens the resilience of church leaders, enhances mental and spiritual care within the communities, and build ecumenical networks across denominations and countries. To date, MECC has reached hundreds of thousands of refugees and IDPs family with related host communities across the region through different humanitarian interventions and under different sectors. All MECC programs are carefully designed to respond to real and emerging identified needs based on thorough technical assessment conducted in close relationship with the affected communities we serve. We do believe that beneficiaries are not merely recipients, but rather active partners and co-owners of the program, along working with all MECC stakeholders in each targeted community. Innovation and creativity of different types of implementation modalities remain a key driver of impactful and sustainable responses to ensure that all interventions contribute meaningfully to social cohesion and peace building. MECC adopts a shared future approach developed in collaboration with one of its partners. This approach is integrating across all programs through the design of tailored indicators, enabling the Council to measure the impact of each intervention related to peace building and social cohesion outcomes. Institutionally, the Diaconia Department is an active member in ACT Alliance forums in the region and currently serves on its governing board. It also represents MENA region to the Global Ministry Board affiliated with the United Church of Christ and the Church of Disciples in the United States. Furthermore, MECC is a member of Core Humanitarian Standards Alliance and is actively undertaking self-assessment processes to ensure continuous learning and accountability. Before concluding, it is important to recognize the dedication and commitment of MECC staff who are serving not merely as technical professionals, humanitarian workers, but rather as stewards of faith, embodying compassion and hope in their daily work. The Council in turn prioritizes their well-being by providing ongoing pastoral care and psychological support, acknowledging the challenges faced by frontline responders. Finally, we extend our deepest gratitude to the community we serve. It is through them that we are able to live out our mission, encountering in every phase of suffering a call to serve with dignity, humility, and love. And thank you very much.
Thank you, Samer. MECC is always just on time. You took 9 minutes. I just want to mention that the trauma healing program Samer mentioned is actually managed by Father Antoine, who led the prayers and the meditation within the theological department. One more comment I would like to share with the speakers is that to go slowly while talking so that the translators can do their job adequately. Now we're going to the GOPADER, Sarah Sava, who is the Deputy General Director of the Department of Ecumenical Relations and Development at the Greek Orthodox Patriarchate of Antioch and all the East. She has a bachelor degree in political science and a bachelor degree in international affairs. She is a PhD candidate in international relations. She has worked for over 17 years in humanitarian work with international NGOs, including U.S. Embassy in Lebanon, where she worked at the Refugee and Asylum Division, and now in the largest faith-based organization in Syria. She is an active member of international platforms. She moved to Syria in 2016 because she's of Cypriotic origin, and currently serves the role of Deputy Director at GOPADER. Sarah, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Dr. Abs, my colleague panelists, and everyone attending with us today for having us. It's a great time, especially this year, to speak about these very important topics. Today, I will be presenting the work that GOPADER does. And for those of you who don't know, GOPADER is the largest faith-based organization currently operating only inside Syria. GOPA stands for the Greek Orthodox Patriarchate, and so DERD, the Department of Ecumenical Relations and Development, is the official arm of the church. And when we say official arm, I'm talking about the humanitarian arm. Today we have many things to talk about. I'll begin with our vision, which is faith in action, our mission to reduce poverty, preserve human dignity, preserve gender equality, provide the platform for peace building through social cohesion, and definitely not to forget addressing climate crisis by bridging the knowledge with climate action. At the moment in Syria, GoPaDerd has been vetted as a low-risk organization for the last at least 10 years in a row. What this means is that we partner with 24 international partners who have a due diligence process that GoPaDerd passes through. And this also includes auditors, etc., and they always come out with this risk. Low risk means that we are eligible to receive funding and our compliance and due diligence is sound. We are also a CHS Alliance member. We have 1,200 staff members scattered across the country, 25 branch offices in all 14 governorates. In other words, we work across the entire Syrian geography. We have 58 social centers, and each year we provide benefits to 2.5 million direct beneficiaries. As you probably have remembered from the discussions earlier, GoPaDerd was established in 1994, making it 32 years old today. GoPaDerd was not established during the Syrian crisis. On the contrary, it was established a very long time ago and has vast expertise in development, not only in humanitarian work. This is the map of Syria, and as you can see on the map, you can have a look at our offices and centers scattered across the whole Syrian geography. This is the list of our current partners. We work with UN and INGOs bilaterally, and we have been doing so since the war broke out in Iraq, and we welcomed Iraqi refugees in Syria, and of course, since the Syrian war 14 years ago. As I said, each year we benefit 2.5 million direct beneficiaries, but also about 5 million indirect beneficiaries. If you're wondering what's the difference between the two, when we say indirect, for example, if we dig a well and equip it, this well will provide water for an entire village. So this is why it's indirectly going to a lot of people. When we speak about how we do our work, we will talk about our humanitarian action. But first, let's talk about the situation in Syria now. If some of you have been following up with the crisis in Syria for 14 years, now in 2026, we have 16.5 million people in need. Food security is one of the top priorities in Syria at the moment, with 3 million people severely food insecure and 9.1 million are food insecure. When we say severely food insecure, we mean that they can eat only once every 2 days. Internally displaced people, unfortunately, inside Syria continue to be 7 million, which is a very large number. Let's talk about Syria today, which is at a turning point, right? So in December of 2024, Syria was liberated. However, today, we still have a lot of challenges. If we look at the geopolitical and security issue, Syria is undergoing a transitional phase. Sanctions are considered to be relieved, but still Syria is fragile in terms of safety and security and requires strong peace-building efforts. If we look at the socioeconomic picture, we see that around 95% of Syrians today live below the poverty line. Yes, 95%. Recovery opportunities alongside reconstruction needs are quite needed at the moment. This is why we have a lot of risks that continue to arise in Syria, affecting Christians and non-Christians alike. Poverty, social tension, and of course, aid dependency. As a faith-based organization, GoPaDerd provides a list of programs, but these programs fall under 3 strategies: emergency response, recovery, livelihoods, and sustainable development. This is why we already designed our programs to fit in with the triple nexus. The triple nexus is a programming strategy that is now very much needed in the context not only of Syria, but in the region as a whole. Because we're talking about shifting from humanitarian aid through recovery to resilience and peace building. Our set of programs can be seen through health programs, education, shelter, which is rehabilitating apartments, schools, shops, hospitals, clinics, etc., community-based initiatives, WASH, providing rent assistance, distributing food and non-food items. At the same time, protection programs, we focus on children through child protection, on gender-based violence survivors, and on psychosocial support. The most important, which leads to resilience, of course, is the recovery and livelihoods. So we provide vocational training, small business startup grants, and at the same time, cash or voucher assistance. As I said, this helps communities shift from aid towards recovery and then to resilience. And how does this help the people? Well, GoPaDIRD has been on the ground for many years, as I said. And we have gained the trust of the communities because we do not differentiate with people's backgrounds, religious affiliations, or any other aspect of the human being. We serve them as per the needs. And this has been proven in all our programs. And this is why the communities rely on us a lot, because we are neutral as a church and because we're not registered under the government. We weren't previously, we were not now, and we will continue to work under the umbrella of the church only. This is why the end result of our programs under, for example, emergency, is that we reduce immediate harm and we prevent further deterioration of living conditions after shocks. The end result of our programs under recovery address underlying vulnerabilities and prepare communities for future crises. And of course, the end result of resilience and peace building is that we strengthen resilience so that communities can better withstand future disasters. And when we speak about peace building, it's worth to note that GoPaDIRD in 2018 was invited to Finland to Tampere Peace and Research Institute, where it was asked to portray why and how it was able to create peace building in a time of crisis as a church through social cohesion. Because GoPaDIRD has long-standing expertise in social cohesion. In our protection programs, we invite people usually from all parts of Syria to our social centers to give them psychosocial support and counseling. Through these sessions, they first come in as enemies, refusing to talk to each other because they have different mindset, different beliefs. But through our sessions with professional psychiatrists, psychologists, psychotherapists, they leave after a few days as friends. And this is why they realize that the war has affected all of them in the same way. In other words, the overall impact of our work in Syria today shows through preventing social instability in social cohesion, as I just said, but also working to achieve sustainable development goals and promoting self-reliance of those relying on us through livelihoods, resilient recovery and reconstruction. And let me conclude, please, by saying that it's true that Syria today is going through a transitional phase. However, Syrians rely heavily on humanitarian aid workers to survive, because currently, of course, the government has a lot of other priorities, and humanitarian needs, as you recall from the beginning of the presentation, remain extremely high. Thank you so much for listening in, and I'll be very happy to answer any question you may have.
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you for respecting the time too. You took less than 10 minutes. Now it's the turn for the Saint Afram. Mr. Hisham Saad is the Executive Director of EPDC. It's the Saint Afram Patriarchal Development Committee in Syria. He is there for more than 3 years. He has a background in engineering for 20 years. He's part of the Syrian families and considers his work at EPDC as part of the church service. He's working on more than 19 projects under church umbrella, trying to help the most vulnerable people and help them to survive during the difficult time. Hisham, the floor is yours.
Thanks for all, and thanks to Dr. Abs for giving us the chance to be in this type of webinar. So it's an honor for me to be here, and I'll start direct with my presentation, if you allow me. So I'll start with a webinar. It's church the role of church during crisis or war or response. So I'll start with the Bible, with Matthew 11:28. Come to me, all who weary and burden,
and I'll give you rest.
Sorry for the internet. I'm in Al-Hasaka, northeast Syria.
Oof.
I know the internet condition. So during the war, we know the crisis and everything, it will be more difficult. How to speak about the war, and many different crises come to Syria at the same time. So we are talking about and a lot of other crises like economical condition, which we have it now. And also at the same time, we have as a church to be on ground, helping all the people in need, and all the people, they know they have a home to come on. So let me start with EBDC. What's the meaning of the EBDC and who we are? We are faith-based organization. We are the relief arm of Syriac Patriarchate Church. Mainly we start in 23 when we have our refugee brother who came from Iraq. That time we don't have a EBDC. We are just a church trying to help people in need in Syria. Unfortunately, with the crisis in Syria, the church has to come on the ground, and we are talking about the crisis, the war in Syria. So we have to come on the ground, but in different modality. The new modality, it's the faith-based organization, which is EBDC. So we have to come on the ground 2012, trying to help and support all people in need without looking for any background. We do as ABD, we support all the need in many different sectors, and we do all our work in emergency response, healthcare, and sure, we can say we are unique in Syrian heritage, restoration and work, and I'll come back to it. And sure, with the peace building and advocacy. Mainly,
What happened? Yeah. Maybe the line was cut from Hasaki. Can we check if he's cut from?
Yes, we lost connection.
There's no connection. No. He's at the northeastern part of Syria, where the situation is not that stable. So we wait a little, maybe he gets reconnected. In the meantime, let me say that after Hisham, there will be the role of, he's back.
I'm here again, and I try my best to during those 15 years. Okay, we try to support all the vulnerable family or people in need without looking for anything or background with many different sectors. So during the earthquake, also between Aleppo, Latakia, and Hama, also we have our own response when we have our Lebanese brother who came in September 2024 in the collective shelter, and also when we have the explosion in the church, in Maria's church in Damascus. Also, many response for camping on northeast Syria, Al-Hol and other camp. At the same time, when we have the crisis in southern Syria, a lot of people displaced from their house and come to other area, we have to be on ground, support those family. At the same time, unfortunately, we have a lot of crises in Syria during the war, and we have to support our family, our brother and sister from many different areas in Syria, in Al-Sheikh Maqsoud, which is in Aleppo, and also the photo which you see it in right side, it's the collective shelter. We built it in Suwaida area. So in many different type of support, we provide a food basket, winterization kit, cash assistant, hygiene kit, dignity kit, water supply, and returnees kit. At the same time, we have many different health center. As we have here in the photo, we have 2 dialysis center. It's running for more than 12 years. Now, and we have many primary health centers all around Syria. And sure, we have a project to support Syrian Christian for cancer. The photo which you have it. Support with the medication, and psychosocial support and mental health. At the same time, we have our project in education and the protection, and we use a project it's called Channel of Hope to support, to train the faith leader how to do protection through faith leader. In livelihood, we have many different type of livelihood, and we have 4 productivity project in Syria: carpenter shop, homemade food, blanket factory, and the traditional food. For Syrian heritage support, we work in Crac de Chevalier for free, and we managed to do before the earthquake a lot of work on Crac de Chevalier, saving this any damage or extra damage after it has affected by the war in Syria. And recently we are working also in Palmyra, doing those type of work. At the same time, we have a unique project for peace building. We managed to get many different faith leaders from many different backgrounds and many different areas, trying to start with the peace building after all those what we have it in Syria and through those faith leaders. With the advocacy, we have a lot of project-related advocacy, with starting with the GBV and 16 days campaign, back to school, health campaign, and a lot. And as we move from emergency response to development, we have 100 of project related: solarization, water well solarization and innovation project providing farmers with portable solar unit to support their work. And as you see here, it's some of our major partner who work with and who support and believe in EBDC and support EBDC on their work. It's not the conclusion, it's the end of my presentation. Through compassion and service and resilience, faith becomes the flame of light in the darkness moment. The experience of Syria shows that even in very difficult time in district, humanity can raise when a conclusion from my side. So church has a lead position, Syrian community, and I speak about Syria, and we have to continue on this work. Thanks.
Thank you, Hisham, very much for this presentation. Now it's the turn for Caritas. Father Samir Ghawi, head of Caritas, will be talking to us in Arabic from South Lebanon, where they had a big convoy today to the resisting, still remaining and resilient people of the south of Lebanon. Father Samir Ghawi is from the Lebanese monastic order, Maronite order. He is experienced in education and social leadership. He holds multiple advanced degrees from Holy Spirit University, Kaslik, including master's degree in education, administration, and theology, as well as dogmatic theology. Throughout his career, he has held several prominent leadership positions in schools. Father Samir is there. He has also led and coordinated numerous social and humanitarian initiatives, notably serving as product manager of child protection in Lebanon in collaboration with the European Union. He is now presiding Caritas Lebanon, where he served as member of the board and coordinator of projects. Since February 1st, he is the head of the Caritas Lebanon. Abuna Samir, the floor is yours.
I give you the floor. Speak Arabic and you can, that is the translation.
Thank you.
The first of all, I will speak, unfortunately, supposedly, I was supposed to speak from the south. I arrived after 11 hours. There was some bombing. We have 25 of trucks and we could arrive with difficulty to this place. Today, I will speak about the role of church in the times of war and of crisis. Not only the role of Caritas Lebanon, but also the role of all the staff and all the partners that we work with. We work all together. We are in a very difficult situation. We work in a very difficult times. The church asked us to stand by all the staff of the church, by all the workers in the church. We work with all the community, with all communities. The first people that we work with, they are people who could stay alive in the south. We are responsible for them. We give them everything: food, shelter, medicine. I will speak in detail about them later. These villages, small villages in the south that we could reach. The second category that we work with are the people who displaced. They were forced to leave their houses. The vast majority of this part, we are speaking about a very large percentage of the people living in this area, people who left their houses. They didn't go to shelters, but they stayed outside. The third category are the people who have problems, economic problems because of the war. They are in need. They are in a very big need of everything. We are helping a large amount of people. These people, we are helping them, and we have other categories that we need to stand by in most of the time. The role that the church is playing right now is we have these villages, small villages, the people who decided to go back to their houses, who left their houses and to their lands. This case, we are trying to provide them with all the necessities that they need. All the people who worked at the responsibility of the church asked us to provide them with the psychological support, with the moral support, and any kind of other support that we can afford. We are working with more than 15 missions groups and teams. We are in the first phase of support. We are trying to be as much as we can in these villages. We can't reach these villages because they are far away. They are in the south. The second step, in all hospitals, there are no doctors in hospitals. We lost people because there is no medical services in the hospitals. We divided the region into 3 regions. The first region is at the borders of and the villages whose people displaced and went to another region, Marja Ayoun, Laqlay'a as well, and also the third region, Zahrani. It is far away from the borders, and it is bombed as well. We opened a healthcare center there in coordination with doctors, some group of doctors. They are working in emergency there in the hospital in these villages, in these small villages. The second region or the second section, we also opened a center, healthcare center, with coordination with the health ministry. We are trying to give services, and we cannot all the time give healthcare, and we lost people. We lost people because of the bombing in these regions. We also from this point of view, we are trying to provide these healthcare centers with all the equipment, with doctors, but we can't all the time. The first category we are speaking about, we had a very important point. The right of the people is to be given health care, that they can live with dignity, they can live in their land, they can live in their houses, they can be taken care of in times of war and in crisis. Our priority is to be able to give them support, to be there with them, to practically, this is not easy. It's very difficult in real times. We are responsible for a large number of people, a large number of families that were far away from, they didn't have access to health care, to food, to shelters. We could not, we left the trucks in safe zones, and other trucks, they were not left in safe zones. We have to go back tomorrow. This thing is not easy. We are suffering. The sufferance is huge. We spent 11 hours waiting or to arrive to some places, to some regions. I say again, yes, we are not stopping. We will continue to work and to provide them with guidance, to provide them with support. The people who are displaced, people who left their their houses, their lands. We are trying to reach them. We are trying to reach these people, to be with them. We are working in coordination with other institutions, the state institutions, the country institution. We are trying our best to find these people who left everything, their houses, their lands, their money, everything. They are only with the clubs on their bodies. There is no work. They are unemployed. They don't have anything to go back on. They don't have an income. They are with families. We are not talking about 1 day or 2 days. We are talking about a very long period of time. Despite all of this, we are trying our best, especially to give healthcare services. I am speaking about Lebanon, about Calitas institution. We are trying to give or to provide healthcare services. We give them consultation. We give them shelter. This is a challenge. I say again, we are responsible for these people. Those are our people. We are in a very difficult situation. We are in a very critical phase. We don't want them to leave their country. If they leave the country, they will not go back again. We are trying to help people stay in their land. The third category, the people who are in need, originally in need, they don't have an income. We are trying to help them, to reach them, who are displaced as well. Those people, we're not going to leave them alone here in Lebanon. We have an economic crisis, a very severe economic crisis. There are a lot of institutions who are closed, who let go of their workers and staff. We are trying our best to not lose our families, not to lose our people. We are trying to provide them with everything they need. We try to give them employment opportunities. Today, I can say that to conclude, of course, in this 10 minutes, I'm trying to say that the good thing, the good news is that we are in difficult times. Yes, this is true, but we are trying our best. But a lot of people are saying, Christians, they are saying that today we are saying that we see the church standing by our side. The church is taking care of us. The church is here. We can see the reverence. We can see people who work in the church by our side. Yesterday we called the Pope from the south. He gave us support. He encouraged us. He said that the church, the local church and the mother church is by the side of everyone. Thank you.
شكرا أبونا. Thank you very much. بدي أحكي بالإنجليزي شيء حضرتك ذكرته بطريقتي أنا بالنسبة للMECC. What Father Samir mentioned about the villages of the periphery of Lebanon, the south of Lebanon, remaining there, the Christians remaining there. We insisted on that, and we made a sort of big campaign. We have only the word is our arm, to have the Christians remaining there as the guardians of the place, of the guardians of the identity. Because if it's emptied from the Christians, this area will lose its identity and would be fully lost. We wanted to keep it, to keep the Christians there, because we want them to be not to be uprooted, one, and two, because they will be the guarantee for the returning of all the villagers in South Lebanon. And this is a role very well played by all the churches. The church has never been closer to its people than this time in the history of Lebanon and the Middle East. Thank you, Abuna. Now the turn is for the Armenian Orthodox Catholicosate of Cilicia, whose head is the Vihapar Aram, the most prominent maybe person in the world of ecumenism. He has made the largest number of books on ecumenism. Now, Father Moses Garen will be representing this the Catholicosate. Besides what I'll be saying here, Father Moses Garen, you find him everywhere. Whenever you go to a church, you find him there. He's really, really ecumenical, and we're proud and happy to have him as a member of the MECC committee for the ecology and ecology care. He's a monk priest from the Armenian Silesian order, ecumenical officer of the Armenian Orthodox Church, Holy See of Cilicia. He holds a Master in Divinity from the NEST, Near East School of Theology. He works in Diaconia, especially since 2018, economic crisis, Beirut blast, and so on. His agriculture expertise supports these initiatives through practical engagement with afforestation, sustainable land use, and ecological awareness. Overall, Garen, the known, very beloved Garen, Father Moses, represents a multidisciplinary profile combining priestly ministry, ecumenical leadership, environmental advocacy, agricultural science, youth work, and cultural engagement, serving both the Armenian Church and the wider Christian community of the Middle East. Abuna Moset, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Dr. Abbas. I will greet everyone and say, Christos Hariavi Merelots, Al-Masih Qam. Christ is risen. In the time of this despair, the hope of resurrection is the only clue for every deacon who is in diakonia in the life of the church in the world. Distinguished members of the World Council of Churches, esteemed delegates, dear sisters and brothers in Christ, I bring you warm greetings from the Armenian Church, and in particular from the Catholicosate of the Great House of Cilicia in Antillias, a spiritual Mediterranean center where faith is not only proclaimed but lived through active service to humanity. Quoted from Aram I, the Catholicos of Armenians, Antillias is the diakonia, Antillias Zairayutunne. For Armenians, Antillias means also the center of the Armenian Church. So we use the name city as the center of our diaconia. It is both an honor and a responsibility to stand together, WCC and MECC today, to reflect on diaconia, the sacred ministry of service, not simply as a theological concept, but a living reality shaped through history and tested in the times of war, crisis, and human suffering. Being an archdeacon for 7 years in the Diocese of Lebanon, in the largest parish, and now monk priest in the Cilician Armenian order, I rely on the success stories and the critical situation that I had in my diaconial years, especially during the economic collapse, Beirut port attack blast, Israel-Lebanon, Israel-Syria conflicts, Palestinian issues, revival of Beirut, the capital, revival of Aleppo, sustainability of Jordan and Egypt, and the refugee transplantation from a land to islands to continents, i.e. Cyprus, Gulf, Arab Peninsula, to Europe, to the Americas and Australia. For the Armenian Church, diaconia is at the very heart of the presence of its mission, especially with silent diaconia and big number of deacons. It is a continuation of Christ's mission to serve, to heal, to uplift, and to restore dignity. Our history, marked by genocide, displacement, and ongoing instability in the Middle East since 1948 until today, has taught us that faith must be visible in action. In moments when everything, currency, governance, armies, communities, and cities collapses, service becomes the church's most powerful witness. His Holiness Aram I, Catholicos of Armenians of the Great House of Cilicia, has consistently articulated a clear and prophetic vision of diaconia. He teaches that the church cannot remain confined with its walls. It must go out into the world, into places of pain, injustice, and suffering. Service to humanity and his understanding is not optional. It is a theological imperative. the church becomes truly the body of Christ when it becomes the servant of all. From the Holy See in Antilles, this vision has taken concrete and organized through a wide network of institutions and organizations that embody different dimensions of diaconal ministry. We don't have any one unit because we are dispersed all over the world. So we have long-standing humanitarian organizations of the Armenian Church, some globally active and some regionally, such as the Armenian Relief Cross, Gulbenkian and other educational fund, the Armenian General Benevolent Union, the Genesian Memorial Foundation, and the Karagosian Foundation have sustained generations through education, healthcare, and the social welfare. They provide scholarship and empowerment to youth and women, care for the sick, and offer stability to the families facing the hardship. In times of peace, they build communities. In times of crisis, they become lifelines. So, it is about a place of working in different areas. We start from Lebanon, the Azkain Arash Nortaran, which is the diocese leadership and its diakonia department, who gathered the social workers of all the centers from 2018, provide the structure and coordination to these efforts, ensuring that service is organized, sustainable, and responsive. At the same time, modern initiatives such as the Deputy Armenian Blog connect communities, raise awareness, and mobilize support from the global diaspora. We will see in details how they governed the diaconia within koinonia, receiving many helps, cooperating with the stakeholders of the society and municipalities in Burchamut, Beirut, Anjar, Antilles, Zal, Ajuni, and Chibet. During the war in Syria, the entire Armenian communities were displaced and the cities like Aleppo faced devastations. These organizations mobilized immediately. Families who had lost everything receiving shelter, food, and medical care. The schools reopened under extremely difficult conditions, ensuring that the children would not lose their future to war. These are not abstract achievements, but real stories of resilience, children continuing their education despite the bombardments, families rebuilding their lives from nothing. The Azkain Arash Nortaran, which is the diocese leadership, which is of Syria, worked for the care and still today, after they are in the koinonia of the all faithful, not only Armenians, vis-a-vis working by interchurch and interfaith witness during the 18 years of travel in different regions, especially in Kesab and Latakia, was the optimum of diaconia when all the people of Kesab was displaced to Latakia in 2016. The priest pastors of Kesab and many other clergy initiated by the Catholicosate was with the people in their tent city until they returned to their home. For the orphans, we have the Bird's Nest Orphanage in Lebanon, a historic refuge established after the Armenian genocide once again opened its doors to children fleeing conflicts. Many arrived traumatized and alone. Through care, education, and love, they found healing and hope. Their transformation stands as a powerful testimony to what diaconia can achieve. Not only a center is caring, but also many volunteers and alumni of Bird's Nest have the hub again to Survivor Center of Armenians, where diaconia installed by the Danish missionary of KMA Maria Jakobsen and still by the leadership of the Armenian Church is actively serving as deacons to the orphans table. For the healthcare, we have institutions such as the Armenian Sanatorium, Afil Insurance Center, the Karagosian Foundation, expanding their services during times of the economic collapse and war. When access to medical care became a privilege few could afford, These institutions ensured that the most vulnerable were not abandoned. Mr. Aleko and Mrs. Ani Bezikian made a very large humanitarian and monetary help to the revival of Beirut Blast by caring for the buildings, development of Armenian houses in Saint-Jacques compound of towers for the sake of the new Armenian families who live there. Moreover, they helped for the medical needs to a huge number of faithful. Institutions as Kahal and programs like Armenian handworks by elders preserves identity. For the youth, we have youth and the sport institution related to the church or to the scouts. Homened Men and Hopened Men demonstrates another dimension of diakonia. Beyond sports and scouting, they cultivate responsibility, solidarity, and leadership. During time of crisis, their members became volunteers, distributing aids, supporting the elderly, and creating safe environments of children by trauma healing. Vital care. Equally vital are the contributions of women's and communities organizations such as Armenian Relief Cross, Naragidi Ramayr, Afed, and Ehlan Houses Communal Service. Often working quietly, they have been pillars of support for families, widows, and the marginalized. During the most difficult times, they ensured that no one was left alone, preserving dignity even in the face of poverty and displacement. These are for women empowerment and for healthcare mentally and physically. Also, they are continuous in help of families who are working with them. I will not remind the long resilient years of Lebanese civil war, the Holy Land conflict, and the displacement of the Armenians of Cyprus during invasion, the loss of happened during 1952 to 58 in Egypt and Syria, and the huge number of past diakonia, which is the legacy of the Armenian diakonia and survivor of the people in the midst of conflict. Armenian during centuries find a solution, se débrouiller soi-même, said in French. Again, in all difficult moments, they are looking to have solution. Diakonia is again seen when families were transferred from Syria, Iraq, Iran, Egypt to European and American countries. The Armenian church welcomed their children and the local institution helped the arrival of believers. Dear brothers and sisters, in today's world where suffering takes many forms, war, economic collapse, displacement, and social fragmentation, the call to diakonia is more urgent than ever. The vision of His Holiness Aram I challenges us to move beyond charity towards solidarity, beyond assistance toward empowerment, and beyond isolation toward collaboration. The Armenian Church, through its lived experience, offers a simple yet profound witness. Even in the darkest times, service can become a source of light. Diakonia is not only about helping others survive, it is about helping them live with dignity, faith, and hope. As members of the World Council of Churches and Middle East Council of Churches, we are called to walk this path together. Our unity is not found in uniformity, but in our shared commitment to serve humanity in the name of Christ. May our churches continue to be places not only of worship, liturgy, and folklore, but of active compassion. May we stand where we are most needed among the suffering, the displaced, and the forgotten. And may our shared diakonia become a living testimony to the transforming power of God's love in this world. And thank you.
Thank you, Father Moses. You took 3 minutes more than the time. Anyway, now it's the time for the Evangelical Synod for Syria and Lebanon, organization called Compassion, headed by Mr. Amir Bitar. Amir is the Executive Director of Compassion Protestant Society, the diaconal arm of the National Evangelical Synod of Syria and Lebanon. serving vulnerable communities in both countries through humanitarian assistance, education, psychosocial support, and peace-building initiatives. He is concerned with strengthening locally led, community-based, dignity-centered approaches to crisis response and community restoration. Amir, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Dr. Habs. Good afternoon, everyone. It's been a long day, but it's a real privilege for me to contribute to this conversation alongside the many respected leaders serving our region in these difficult times, and some of whom are role models for me personally. I come to share with you today on behalf of Compassion Protestant Society, the diaconal arm of the National Evangelical Synod of Syria and Lebanon. And if I may be honest, I love the topic of this webinar because it is my opinion that we, as Christians community in this part of the world, really struggle in our attempt to answer the question, what really is the role of the church in times of war? And for me, more specifically, I really take time and contemplate what a truly diaconal response would look like in the context of the war in the Middle East today. Right off the bat, I would like to contend that war changes people. And more so, war dehumanizes people. When families are displaced and homes are destroyed and institutions are overwhelmed, communities are fractured. But perhaps one of the greatest dangers of war is that it teaches society to stop seeing people as human beings. In Lebanon today, we are not only facing humanitarian collapse, we are also facing emotional exhaustion, social fragmentation, fear, and deep mistrust. And in moments like these, churches can either retreat inward in fear or rediscover their mission as catalysts of peace and servants of the wider community. And I believe this is where the diaconal role of the church becomes especially important. If I reflect a little bit on what we as Compassion Protestant Society have done in the past 8 or 9 weeks, we have managed to support 8 collective shelters. We came alongside the ministries of education and social affairs. We collaborated with at least 5 other like-minded local ministries. We supported 200 families across shelters, distributed 900 hygiene kits, 1,000 hot meals, 225 children in our education and psychosocial program, and 28 psychosocial support circles. But really, when we talk about diakonia, we're talking about more than just assistance. At CPS, we have increasingly become convinced that the church must not merely function as a channel for aid distribution. The church brings something very unique during crises. First, it brings presence. Churches are already embedded inside communities long before crises begin. They bring trust in contexts where institutions may collapse or lose credibility. Local faith communities often remain relationally trusted and relevant. And third and fourth, they bring meaning and hope. The church can address emotional, relational, and spiritual wounds. And probably this is something that no one else can compete with. This requires the church to move beyond a narrow understanding of aid. The church must not only help its own people, its own sons. It must become a visible expression of compassion towards the whole community. And this is easier said than done. One important lesson for us in war times has been this. Local churches should not merely host humanitarian projects designed elsewhere in fancy office spaces. They can and must become active responders and trusted local actors themselves. Churches in the Middle East, and particularly in Syria and Lebanon, have occupied a sizable share of all humanitarian efforts in both countries. Local churches coordinate relief, mobilize volunteers, host displaced families, organize distribution, provide relational support within their communities, and the list goes on. But when we go the extra mile to awaken, train, and equip churches for mission and action, it is then that we effectively change the role of the church from passive infrastructure for assistance to active diaconal presence. And because churches are relationally embedded in the society, they are often able to respond quickly, personally, and with deep contextual understanding. One of the most important choices we made at CPS, like many others on this call, was refusing to respond only within confessional boundaries. In most of our programs, the overwhelming majority of beneficiaries are non-Christians, but not because we want to minimize or are willing to minimize our Christian identity, and not because we want to comply with standards, but really because we want to take our mission and our identity seriously. In times of war, the church becomes most credible when it serves beyond itself. But for us, this commitment to crossing boundaries did not stop at beneficiary targeting. Over time, we also began intentionally welcoming people to our team from different religious backgrounds into parts of our own teams and programs, while remaining fully transparent about our Christian identity and values. And for us, this was not a compromise of identity. Again, it was an expression of it. In a deeply polarized environment like Lebanon today, many people grow up assuming they will only truly belong among their own. Especially in times of war, we choose to ask a different question. What would it mean for the church to become a place where even the different other, quote unquote, can encounter dignity, trust, acceptance, and share humanity? Through shared life, through shared working together, through serving communities side by side, not through slogans. At CPS, we increasingly realize that humanitarian response is not only about keeping people alive, it is also about helping people remain human. And this is why our response, even when we offer relief, it revolves around psychosocial support, child-friendly spaces, relational accompaniment, listening, and creating safe spaces where dignity could be restored. Basically prioritizing human relationships and human people. Displacement is not only material loss, it is the loss of home and often self-worth. And sometimes the most meaningful thing we can offer is not only assistance itself, but the restoration of dignity and helping people realize that they are seen, that they matter, and that they are not forgotten. Again, like many of my brothers and sisters shared today, war does not only destroy infrastructure, it damages trust between communities. And this is why we believe diaconal work must move beyond relief alone into reconciliation and social healing. At CPS, this conviction increasingly shapes our work through youth engagement, peace-building initiatives, and creating spaces where relationships across divisions can be rebuilt. Because in polarized societies, humanitarian aid alone cannot heal the deeper wounds of fear and fragmentation, the church has a unique opportunity, not only to respond to suffering, but also to resist hatred. The Middle East does not only need stronger humanitarian systems, it does need that, but it also needs communities capable of compassion across fear, dignity across division, and hope across exhaustion. The church cannot solve every crisis, but it can remain present. It can protect dignity, and it can resist fear and polarization. And it can remind society that even in war, our humanity is not lost. For us at CPS, this is what diaconal response means. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you. Now, last but not least, we will go to our last speaker, Mr. Sami Youssef. He is the Chief Executive Officer of the Latin Patriarchate of Jerusalem, where he assumed his responsibility in September 2017. He is a native of the old city of Jerusalem and belongs to one of the 13 oldest Christian families with continuous presence in Jerusalem for centuries. He pursued higher education in the United States, receiving degrees from the University of Massachusetts at Amherst and the University of Pittsburgh. After a 24-year career in academia, holding several teaching administrative positions at Baham University, now he is serving on the board of several local institutions, including the Secretariat of Solidarity, Justice and Peace Commission, Society of St. Eve, the Catholic Center for Human Rights, Caritas, Baby Hospital, and so on. Now the floor is yours. Please, I would like to remind the participants that we will carry on beyond the designated time to be able to accommodate all the speakers to say what they have to say and to leave some room for the Q&A. Thank you. تفضل, Mr. Sami.
Thank you, Dr. Abs. Warm greetings to everyone from the old city of Jerusalem. I think conflict and wars are not strange to Palestinian society. We probably have the greatest experience in a very, very sad way in situations like that. And I'd like to point out as I begin really that if you look really at just 4 generations in my family, none of us actually holds a birth certificate from the same governing authority. My grandfather from the Ottoman Empire, the Turkish rule, my father from British Mandate Palestine, myself from the Kingdom of Jordan, and my children from the State of Israel. Yet we were all born in the same house in the old city of Jerusalem. And I think what has been constant in our lives has been the church and the church institutions that has been serving faithfully, many of them for over 150 years. And thus, if you look at some of the institutions that are around us today, schools, hospitals, clinics, orphanages, they've been around for over 150 years, providing services in education, healthcare, and social health, education, and social services. And to my knowledge, I may be wrong with this one, to my knowledge, none of them has shut down. In Palestine alone, there are over 297 institutions of the various churches that provide services in these critical sectors. And they provide services to 45%, roughly 45% of the Palestinian society, while at a time that the Christian presence is under 1%. So we are quite a small, I don't like to use the word minority, but for demographic purposes I will, a small minority of less than 1% is providing services for approximately 45%. In all practical terms, doing the work of governments rather than a church or a combination of churches. What unites us all technically really is the value set that governs the delivery of the service throughout these sectors. And at a time, and Jerusalem is a very politically charged city in a sense, at a time when on the street the talk is about revenge and destruction and killing and hate, you enter any of our, challenge anyone, you enter any of our Christian institutions, regardless of the field of service, And immediately you feel the talk about coexistence and forgiveness and tolerance, sharing, peace, love, and so on and so forth. And immediately, I think that rubs off on anyone who is receiving that service in many ways. And it's not only our Christian community. In most instances, it is non-Christians who actually enjoy the value set that we have to offer. As far as our work, really, in terms of all the churches, but I would pinpoint really on the Latin Patriarchate in some ways, there are three pillars of our work. And I think that is, for most churches, in many ways standard. The pastoral work, the education, and the humanitarian. These are the three pillars, technically, of our work. The largest, actually, in terms of funding, is the educational. The Latin Patriarchate operates and administers a network of 44 schools scattered in 3 countries, serving 19,000 students. And in some of these places, I cannot claim in any way that we are, as Christians, in the majority. Actually, in the Palestinian schools, 35% of our population is Christian. In Jordan, it's a little better at 63%. And in Israel, it's 82%. Overall percentage of 50%. So we're not here really to serve our Christian community solely, not in any way. And I think I feel that we get appreciated more in terms of our non-Christian populations, because our Christian populations take us for granted. And the most they enjoy, in all honesty, is that value set I spoke a little bit about. As far as our humanitarian intervention, in many ways, I think we've been at it for, I don't know, 20, 30, 40 years, given the history of Palestine. We've been at it for several decades. But if we look just at the last 6 years of crisis in our region, starting with the pandemic, moving into the Gaza war, a very destructive war in Gaza for 2 years, moving into the first Iran war, 2 weeks of pure hell that we witnessed here, and the second Iran war, which I suppose is still on hold, but may break at any time. And what do you do, in essence? And I think in the most recent period, the Gaza intervention probably was our largest intervention as a church. Initially, the focus was on providing support to the Christian community at large. So all of the Christian community took shelter at the 2 churches in Gaza, the Holy Family Catholic Church and the St. Porphyrius Orthodox Church. And we took it upon ourselves really to provide, as has been said by many speakers before, all of their needs, anything you can think of really, we were able to provide it initially. But then immediately you start to realize that you cannot in any way, to be faithful to your faith, continue to only take care of your people. And thus that aid expanded dramatically to provide support throughout the Gaza city. And Gaza city is quite a large city. And it was devastated primarily because of the push of the Israeli army to push everyone southwards. So no aid was being delivered to the northern part of Gaza, in particular to Gaza city. And we were able to provide aid in the tune of 1,500 tons of aid during 2025 alone, reaching approximately 500,000 of the 2 million, roughly 2 million residents of Gaza. And that was really, I think, very, very much appreciated. So at a time when no other humanitarian charity were able to get aid to Gaza, we were able to do it proudly. And that included a whole variety of support. On the West Bank, of course, that was very much affected dramatically as well, because I think one of the previous speakers mentioned the 72% unemployment rate. I mean, that is just mind-boggling to think that 72% of our people are unemployed. And that hit very hard in many areas of the West Bank, in particular in Jerusalem and in the Bethlehem region that relies heavily on the tourism and the pilgrimage sector. And in addition to the pure humanitarian work, basically food packages, cash assistance, rental support, utilities, medical assistance, tuition assistance. Again, anything you can think of, we were able to do it. But where we put the main focus when it was clear that the Gaza war would be a little bit prolonged was in the area of job creation, basically. We were faced with the choice whether you give humanitarian aid, cash handouts to our people, or provide employment in a dignified way. So we converted all of our project work in all of our parishes, schools, clinics, parishes, churches, to project work, to put unemployed craftsmen in particular to work. And hundreds of people were employed during that period and continue to be employed. And we provided one of our largest intervention in the internship program in particular, and thus hundreds of jobs were offered and continue to be offered for unemployed people so that they can receive their income in a dignified way. And we expanded our partnership with the local university, Bethlehem University, in a program that we called AFAQ, self-explanatory. And the idea of that program is to provide capacity building and job opportunities, not in a localized location of Bethlehem University in Bethlehem, but rather through the parishes and the active relationship of the parish priests along with the administrators of the program. So when they were not able for settler violence to move freely through the streets of the West Bank to get to Bethlehem, we sent our trainers to them. And we used the parish facilities as training grounds, basically, to be able to deliver those training programs to enable people to be properly employed or to get them some income generation projects. Where I think we were a little bit also conscious that the idea is not just to provide humanitarian support. I mean, a lot of people can do that. We did it, I think, exceptionally well. But it was important to realize, as a church, what we needed to do on the pastoral level, in a sense. So one of the critical things that we identified is the need to get people and keep people closer to their faith through more active parish work, in a sense. So a lot of the work of the usual parishes, such as Sunday school programs, youth chaplaincies, scout groups, summer camps, were attended by tens of thousands of people, in a sense, exceptionally growing to get the people back to their faith. Because if you live in a continuous war zone, you need to have that hope. And where do you get your hope unless your faith is strengthened in many ways? So we paid a lot of attention to the parish priests and what they should be delivering actually out there. In addition, a number of family counseling centers were established, and that started with the Gaza war technically in various locations to assist individuals and groups who are facing difficulties as part of unemployed people staying at home, domestic problems as a result of that extended problem. And finally, we initiated the Spiritual Formation Center, targeting the laity, basically. And we felt that the laity were thirsty for faith formation programs, professional faith formation programs. And just this current semester, basically, and that was being offered in coordination with the seminary in Beit Jala, 18 courses were offered, and we spread out to people at a time when people could not come to us. So courses were offered in Beit Jala, in Jerusalem, in Ramallah, and in Zababde, and over 880 people participated in those faith formation courses. The future plan basically also is to try to strengthen the people on their land. And what do you do with that? So we sort of expand our work in areas of housing projects, in areas of job creation, and this would be the focus. In addition to our main pillars, this would be the focus of our work into the future. Coordination between various players is critical, and we've played a very important work in coordinating our work together. And finally, the church and church institutions have always emerged stronger I don't know, maybe on our Palestinian experience, we've had that experience to be able to go through it and keep standing on our 2 feet. And that's what we're doing now. And we hope we'll continue to be able to do. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. God bless you in this holy land. I wish one day we'll be able to go there. Now, we went beyond the time. We are at 5:14. We have 4 questions which were collected by our colleague Manoj Gurian. As a matter of fact, three of the questions are rather political. I will read them quickly and you will decide, everybody will decide what question to answer. The first one, what measures can be taken within each country to exert pressure on those who are promoting and sustaining war? This is the deep state. This is the Corporation for Arms and Ammunition. I'm just commenting. How can Christians in all religions, in all regions, take an active and courageous stand following the example of Jesus in the temple to challenge violence, injustice, and the continuation of conflict? This is I feel it more church question. The third question, what are the church's ecumenical partners and the WCC doing to advocate for and ensure the implementation of the many UN resolutions that continue to be neglected or ignored? Rather political, maybe it's advocacy and lobbying, I don't know. Yes. The fourth one, how can we address the economic dimensions of the conflict where war and instability often benefit the wealthy and powerful at the expense of the majority of people? These are very, very important topics, very important problematic stated themes. I would like to mention also that I was taking notes from all who spoke, all the speakers, and there are a huge quantity of very important ideas which need to be dealt with in future consultations and so on. So, Carla, we're having a long journey together to deal with these issues on ecumenicity and diaconia and so on. Really, it was a rich seminar today, a very, very rich webinar. We leave some time for those who would like to answer or comment on some of these questions. I think that whoever is concerned would have taken notes for that and they can answer. Unless you want me to reread one of the 4 questions which may concern you, to answer it directly. It was really a rich interventions. It will be a good document at the end, a reference document. I will leave the floor to the speakers to answer, to comment on some of the questions. Okay. Sami, can you answer the question concerning the UN? Let me read it again. What are the church's ecumenical partners and WCC doing to advocate for and ensure the implementation of the many UN resolutions that continue to be neglected or ignored? It's not necessarily what are they doing, what they should do. Maybe you have something to say because you are under siege for 3/4 of a century so far, isn't it? A bit more.
We are in a very difficult set of circumstances, I would say, and maybe I will just tie it to some of the challenges, actually. As a local church, we operate in 4 countries, Israel, Palestine, Jordan, and Cyprus. Some of them are at war with each other, and it's not easy to actually conduct business in 4 countries and continue some of them at war again, and continue to be standing on your 2 feet. So the advocacy, as much as we are pushed to be more in the area of advocacy, I think people need to realize that we are under the gun as well. If we speak too loudly, and we do live under occupation, then there are consequences, and those consequences could paralyze us from operating or doing business as usual, in a sense. And thus we have to take the high road. We have to concentrate on, the core business that we do. We cannot advertise our work too openly. We should not portray ourselves in such a heroic or over-heroic way when states have failed in doing what they should be doing as far as implementing United Nations resolutions, international humanitarian law, and so on and so forth. And I think we leave us to do the work on the ground, and we can do it very well. But someone else really that is not under the gun day in and day out needs to do that strong advocacy work. That is, in my humble opinion, and I hope it can be taken at face value.
Thank you. May I ask if Reverend Kenneth Mtata can comment on the fourth question? How can we address the economic dimension of the conflict, where war and instability often benefit the wealthy and powerful at the expense of the majority of people? This goes along with your theological basement you made for the presentation for the whole seminar.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Dr. Abs, and to your listeners. I think this is one of the biggest challenges in our time, that the wars have work within an ecosystem of economy. The industry that produces weapons only thrive when wars are going on. So the problem is that we do not have an economy of peace. What we have is only an economy of war. And for this reason, we have not managed to extricate ourselves from this economy of war, because weapons must be sold, new technologies must be developed, and therefore we must continue to cause wars and influence politicians to continue with wars. And that's why the Christian faith has a huge contribution to make, because it offers a complete reversal of this logic when it talks about shaping swords into pruning hooks, when it talks about transforming weapons into productive tools. And I think this is our advocates' responsibility to make sure that we can challenge industries of war to see the value of investing into human development, and that we can transform all these industries that are developing tools of war to become industries that can enhance life. It's a huge task, because in some countries this is a thriving industry. It is on the stock exchange, and the more the wars, the more promises of war, the more rumors of war, the more the stocks are going up. And that's why we must find a way of interrupting this by making wars unpopular. And therefore, the roles of citizens in many of these countries plays an important role when they vote against politicians who are warmongers.
Thank you. I definitely like your reflection. Now, Sarah, you raising your hand. Please go ahead.
Yes, thank you so much, Dr. Abs, and thank you all colleagues. I just want to answer the question that has to do with, in general, generally speaking, how can brethren in the West support their fellow Christians in the Middle East. I will speak in two parts very quickly. The first part is that we are doing a lot when it comes to advocacy domestically, with the government, with the state, regionally, etc. And our role in advocacy is non-stop. It's always ongoing. And the needs are there. For example, in the case of Syria, what we need really is safety and security for all. We don't want to be called minorities. We want to be recognized as Syrian citizens who have the right to live in peace and dignity, and also to be part of the transitional phase that Syria is going through. So what we need from our brothers and sisters in the West is to advocate for their governments so that they will in turn put some pressure on the new interim government, maybe not only in Syria, but also support the governments in the Middle East so that they can in turn support the citizens. The second point I want to talk about, and I'll give an example. For example, when the bombing happened to the Greek Orthodox Church in June, Prophet Elias Church in Damascus, a lot of people asked me, how did this man manage to get inside the church? You know, he was armed, he had maybe a suicide vest, etc. How did he manage to go in? Don't you have any security guards? Doesn't the church have any security? What about the country? And of course, I told them that Syria now doesn't have a proper security apparatus. And no, the church doesn't have its own security. We have just sometimes volunteers who like to, you know, protect the churches when we have celebrations like Easter or Christmas. So here, my appeal would be, and also what we heard from Father Samir in South Lebanon, is for churches in the West to try to support churches in the Middle East to be more resilient in terms of maybe safety and security by helping them perhaps to be able to hire you know, proper safety and security guards, or maybe install more cameras, or build their churches in a way that they become more secure. And in case of crisis, the churches can maybe have shelters for people who might come in these shelters, have enough food and water to sustain, etc. Because the Middle East is at a boiling point, right? It has a lot of crises, a lot of problems happening. So this is the way that this can, you know, work out by us voicing things out like we did in today's excellent webinar. And hopefully such support will be available in the future. It doesn't always have to be financial. Sometimes it's just by voicing, you know, the cries of the people affected in this part of the world, so that decision makers like politicians will start to do some action. Over.
Thank you. Thank you. Before concluding, I was willing to conclude in a more advanced way, in a wider way, but I will go through few ideas in 1 minute maybe. The first one is what Father Antoine raised, how to reconcile secrecy of service with visibility. The second is what Reverend Kenneth about the three diakonia of peace, presence, and prophecy. George Majaj and Act Alliance standardization. Throughout all your interventions, the hidden values, the underlying values of all the interventions, the strategy, the strategy background, despite the emergency response, the resilience in the periphery, and the pillars in the humanitarian and social educational approach of the church. Well, the church is in a way replacing lots of institutions which failed in modern society. Modernity lost its way a little. I write about it very often. So it's important to underline again. We'll never underline it enough to the world, to the whole world, to what extent the church can do things. And maybe initially and essentially we have to more and more sensitize and make our leaders conscious of the importance of what they represent in their clothing, in their clergy attitude, in their clergy job role, and what they need to do to the whole world as message and as action. Now, God bless our service all. God bless all those who make interventions. It was a good webinar. I think it will produce a good document later on as a reference document. Maybe Carla would like also to say something, or we conclude. We just close. Bye. Okay. See you all very soon in other seminars dealing with similar issues.